How you guys looking this season? I know there's a lot of a lot of different approach to the year with the kids kind of mentally. How's everybody handling it and holding up?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. We're doing well, all in all. But we've been doing well from the beginning because, and this is something that you and I will talk about, but there's a huge difference between being a leader and being a head coach.
Right.
And my boss, David Cox, has been a leader from the very, very beginning, and goes back to when the pandemic first started. We were in the A10 tournament, and we finished third in the league, and we had a really good seeding, and I thought we were going to do well in the tournament, and definitely would have made postseason play. But when we landed in New York, you could just get he had a vibe, he had a sense that things weren't right. And so he just really started leading our team at that point, telling the kids to go to their room, stay there, then we'd come back to the meetings, and then he gave them just enough digestible information. And then as we got more information, then he had to make decisions, and he obviously kept our staff in the loop. And then as soon as the tournament was announced that it was over or postponed or canceled, we had 30 minutes to get on the bus to get out of New York, and we were gone within 30 minutes. And then we had a plan. We got back here. We got our kids back home. And then once they were home for a minute, and they wanted to get back to campus, and they needed to get back to campus from an emotional standpoint, like you said, we brought them back to campus. And we've had them here, and it's a good group, and they vibe really, really well with us, our staff, and with each other. And so, knock on wood, we're have done very well. They've done very well.
Well, that's a blessing that, you, like you said, I mean, the difference between a head coach and a leader, and, having the type of leadership in place to be able to, like you said, give them enough where they're kept in the loop and they understand what's happening, but not giving them too much where, they're stressing out, they're nervous, and they're,
Yeah. Absolutely, but like I said, from day one, he's been a leader, and I think we all know what a lack of leadership looks like. So
yeah,
really easy. Yeah, it's really easy to pick out when there's good leadership, and Coach Cox is the leader of our program, and he just really helped our guys through those emotional times. We had a couple guys on their team that had some relatives, family members that contracted the virus, and at that time, that was the early period, so you really, wow, people were dying left and right, still are, but it was during that time where we really didn't know if it was a death sentence or not, and then so we were really smart about what we've done, and other head coaches are spending time were about X and O, and we were spending time making sure our kids were emotionally safe.
Well, it's a people business, and it's when you focus on like you said, the emotional safety, you focus on the physical safety of your kids, and they know that you love them, they know you care about them. Yeah. At the end of the day, they'll run through a brick wall for you. That's one of the things that I've kind of noticed and learned, and it's interesting, and not something that I put on the list of questions, but obviously that was something that kind of caught my eye about your staff. I've encountered some of your younger guys, Buchanan, and I'm trying to think of the other coach's name, but
Austin Carroll.
Yep. So Coach Buchanan, Coach Carroll, I encountered them a couple times. They were recruiting Andre Polk, and just the level of maturity that they carried, the level of professionalism, and a lot of times for young coaches, you don't always see that, right? Like you don't always see, but they understood, the importance of just showing up, communication. Building a relationship, which a lot of times that's the difference maker between landing a kid and not landing a kid, is just what's that relationship look like. Yeah. So when you have a kid from Detroit that's never really lived anywhere else, never really been anywhere else outside of AAU trips, say, hey, you know what, I want to take a look at Rhode Island, right? Yeah. That's I tell guys all the time, I know there's no consolation prizes in this, but sometimes just getting a visit with a kid that you're not supposed to have a visit with, right? Or you're not, isn't supposed to come look your way. That means you're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, both of those guys are tremendous, and they have bright careers, bright futures in this business. And it's interesting because right now on my my Living Trophies Zoom class, the topic is mentorship. Love the game but learn the business. And they both have done a really good job of loving the game, but understanding that it is a business, and a part of understanding that it is a business that you have to have a level of professionalism, and you have to have a level of communication skills and authenticity, and so all those they have those characteristics, and plus they have a great deal of energy and passion, for what they're doing, and they're going to be outstanding coaches, and they both have basketball IQs. Austin's father is John Carroll, so the apple doesn't fall too far away from the trees.
Right.
Grew up learning the game of basketball, and then TJ is an older soul, but he's a guy who loves the University of Rhode Island, played here, and now having the opportunity to get into coaching business at your alma mater, and out on the road, a full-time position, and he's worked his way up the ladder, just speaks volumes to who he is and what their character is about. But you're right. This is a relationship-based business, and you better understand that. And the earlier that you can understand that, and the better off you're going to be. So yes, you can go into an area and recruit a kid, and you may not get them, and that's okay. But you need to go in there and you do your best job, and then you walk away and you build a relationship, and that gives you an opportunity to come back and get the next kid. So, and especially in the volatile business that we're in now with the transfer market, or what I call college version of free agency, and so you better not burn a bridge if you don't get a kid, because you may get him the second time around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you touched on something you touched on a couple things that I want to touch on throughout our conversation. But the first thing I want to start with, you touched on, TJ Buchanan and being at his alma mater, playing there, loving Rhode Island.
Yeah.
You kind of had the same situation, right? You played at James Madison, three-time letter winner. You went on back and you coached there. Talk to me a little bit about your time playing at James Madison. How did that prepare you for your coaching journey? Did you know, when you were on the floor, hey, one day I want to be, that guy? Looked over at that seat over there and said, hey, I want to be that guy that's leading these young men? Or was it just something that kind of happened organically?
Well, great question. I loved my time at James Madison University. It was a perfect school and a perfect program for me. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, so James Madison was two hours away. It was far enough away for me to have a level of independence, but close enough for me to get back home, as I often did, to be around my family. So my time at JMU was, a great time. Absolutely loved it. Played there, and actually I never left. My story is going into my senior year. My college coach, John Thurston, brought me in, and he gave me an offer that at the time, I didn't see it as an offer, but he said, I want you to be a student assistant coach in your senior year, and I was like, nah, coach, I want to play like that. And he said, no, you have a bright future in this business. I know you want to be a coach. You have spent the last 3 summers going back home to the Northern Virginia area to coach your high school team. I know you're passionate about it. You have a brighter future in college coaching than you do for a basketball career. So thank God I had 2 parents that had a bigger picture vision than I did at the time. And they told me that I should accept the position, and I did. And so John Thurston put me on my coaching path, and I've been on that same path for 35 years. But it was a great time for me to be there, because I always knew that I wanted to be a coach. Awesome. Because I had great coaches, coming up when I was in the youth level, and elementary school, middle school, and high school. I had great coaches, starting with my father. He was my first football coach, and And then he surrounded me with other great coaches, men that poured into us as people, and poured into us as students, and then poured into us as athletes. So I was really fortunate enough to have great coaches all the way through. My high school coach, who I'm still very close with, is a Hall of Famer in the Washington, D.C. area, Stu Vetter. And so I played, for him for 2 years, and I always kind of knew that I wanted to get into coaching. I never really left, James Madison, but when I did leave, I was prepared to be a coach.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about the presence of great coaches in your life. You talked about, growing up in that DC area and James Madison being just a good fit for you, a good situation. I talk to student athletes all the time about choosing the right fit, choosing the right home for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, growing up in that time, you had the opportunity to see Coach John Thompson really build something special at Georgetown as a kid growing up. Talk to me a little bit about what his impact on the game of basketball, what it did for you as you're coming back and coaching back in high school basketball. You're coming back and you're still connected to the area, seeing him and seeing a powerful figure that looks like you and represents you. What did that mean for you in your journey?
Fantastic question. It meant everything, and it's still to this day, it means everything. First and foremost, Coach Thompson is a truly larger than life figure, and may his soul rest in peace. But yeah, I growing up in the Washington, D.C. area, I literally and figuratively watched him build that Georgetown program. They were playing on local TV when I was, in middle school and high school. And remember the day that, that Patrick Ewing signed. And then that whole class with Anthony Jones from Washington, D.C. and Bill Martin from McKinley Tech and Ralph Dalton, that was a game-changing recruiting class. And but literally watched Coach Thompson build that program, a Catholic college, and he was a powerful black man, and he was an educated black man, and he stood up and figuratively stood up for things that were important. And now I realize how powerful and important that was, and the barriers that he had to knock down, and the hurdles that he had to overcome. And then I was really fortunate that one of my really good friends, Michael Jackson, who I grew up playing basketball against, went to Georgetown and won a national championship there. So I was learning information from Michael, being on the inside of how they were doing things and what Coach Thompson stood for and the things that he was saying. So it was just an educational experience, and it just fanned my flame of wanting to be a coach. So when Coach Thompson talked about, don't let your stomach existence be 8 to 10 pounds of air, and he had a deflated basketball, I just ate all that stuff up, because I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a coach that had an impact. I wanted to be a coach that poured into my players, that touched their lives in such a way that when they became men, every decision that they made, they wanted my advice on. I just wanted that because I finally got to see what I could become, and so Coach Thompson is a titan, in this world, and then he's a titan in this business. So then when I had the opportunity to go work there for 3 years for John Thompson III, it was just amazing because he literally was there every day, and I had an opportunity to interact with him on a daily basis. He was so giving. He shared of his time. He shared of his knowledge. He was just a tremendous person because you could ask him any question and he would take time for you. And he was just such a big figure, a big fixture. So he has had a huge impact on who I am and the reason why I got into coaching and why I do the things that I do. So, I mean, you touched on so many amazing things about John Thompson, and I, from the outside looking in, I always was able to see him on TV, right? I was able to read about him growing up. As I got into the industry, just doing research and seeing all the things that he stood for, seeing all the times that he spoke out, and knowing, being a young black man and understanding
the stigma attached with speaking out on injustices, both internally and externally, right? It's something a lot of people don't understand, or a lot of people don't know. You know, you'll be sitting in that meeting in that boardroom and you get that feel inside your stomach, like, you know, maybe I should shut my mouth because, you know, I like my job. I like, I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to, seeing a man like him that didn't worry about ruffling feathers. He said what needed to be said when it needed to be said. He stepped up and spoke out. Why do you think, or two-part question, I guess, you see now we're getting back to that a little bit, right? And obviously he walked so we can run with that. But why do you think for so long we've been so quiet within not just coaching, but athletics in general, with speaking out against racial injustices? And obviously I'm happy that now we're at a place where that's, you see the messages on the court with the NBA. You see, the different groups and conglomerates of people coming together to speak out against things that are wrong. But at the same token, it kind of troubles me or bothers me because I know, hey, for the last 40 years, maybe we pretended like it didn't exist, or we pretended like it wasn't an issue, but it's been an issue, and anybody with eyes and anybody with a heart or a moral compass could see the issue and knew that the issue existed, whether we chose to accept it or whether we chose to look past it. What has been the difference? Why now is it more accepted, or it's more acceptable for people to speak out and speak towards creating that change?
We lost our way, we lost our bravery, we lost our courage. There was a time when, Coach Thompson, Coach Cheney, Nolan Richardson, the powerful, the Mount Rushmores of, coaching, and definitely in the African-American community, they had the BCA, the Black Coaches Association, and it was powerful, so powerful that the NCAA was really nervous, because think about it, you had these figures, John Thompson won a national championship, Nolan Richardson won a national championship, Tubby Smith, won a national championship. These guys had power, so they had voices, and they were united. And then we lost our way because, the Black Coaches Association dissolved, went away, and there was just no platform, and also the money just became such a powerful force, that the dollars, that those guys just paved the way for coaches to get paid some of the salaries that they're getting paid now. So with that being said, I go back to my point of, I think we lost our courage to speak out, and we lost our bravery, to speak out, because we didn't want to, like you said earlier, was kind of like, yeah, I kind of like my job and I like my income, and I like what that affords me.
Right.
So it's almost like, it was a trade-off. The amount of, as the money continued to increase, our voices kind of got quiet.
For sure.
And we lost those Mount Rushmores, those guys. And then now, hopefully, more and more coaches are saying, you know what, I'm more brave now. I'm more courageous now, because this is like you, again, I use that same term all the time. If your moral compass, you know what's right and you know what's wrong, but you got to speak your truth.
Yeah.
And you got to deal with the ramifications that come with that, but you got to educate yourself, then you got to empower yourself, and then you got to continue to evolve. And that's the message that we got to continue to do. We got to continue to educate. We got to continue to empower. We got to continue to evolve. Coach Cox says it all the time. We don't want a revolution, but we want an evolution. We want to continue to evolve. We want to continue to speak our truth, and more. There's never been a time like now for us to do it. We have to do it.
Absolutely. And you said something that I think is the key, or you said a couple things is the key, but the one thing I'm going to touch on and point on, you talked about evolution. And in order for evolution to occur, there has to be education, right? There has to be a level of understanding. There has to be a level of knowledge, and knowledge passed down. Knowledge is kept to ourselves and is not shared, is lost. It's wasted knowledge. And one of the reasons why I wanted to get on and talk to you today, obviously you've had a phenomenal coaching career. You did something that, when I came to Spire, I dreamed of turning Spire into the type of powerhouse like it was at Montverde when you were there.
Mm-hmm.
You transcended from the high school level to the college level. You've won at the college level. Whether it be FIBA, whether it be Nike, whether it be USA Basketball, you've won at every level. And having the experience that you've had, having the success that you've had, it's easy to, go into a bubble almost, if you will. It's easy to be a person that says, hey, you know what, I'm focused on me. I'm going to grow, I'm going to develop, I'm going to do things I need to do. And you, Coach Sutton, has done the exact opposite, right? Whether it be, you're living trophies and you're doing Zoom classes and master classes, and you can't go on YouTube and Google Kevin Sutton basketball and not find drills and training techniques. And I mean, there's all this different knowledge that you're sharing, that you're passing on.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about what's driven you to be so open and sharing of the knowledge that you've gained over the years, and then B, what do you see the value or the importance behind that for that next generation, them having not only the mentorship, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, because I think mentorship is vitally important, but having the educators and having the people that say, hey, not only are we going to talk about the things that you need to learn, but the X's and O's. I'm going to teach you how to be a great coach. Those are the things that you're doing. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I grew up in a time, in an era where, my grandmother, my father, my mom, my support system really poured into me, and really believed in my dream, becoming a college player, a student athlete, to go on to college, being the first one in my family to graduate from college. So I always had an understanding and an importance of, wanting to help other people. One thing that I talk about all the time is the word hope. And I use it as an acronym, and it stands for help other people excel. And I gain a great deal of satisfaction from that, because I think it's important that if I'm able to impact lives in a positive way and touch those lives, then I'm making my time here on earth, hopefully a better place. My faith means a great deal to me. So I try to live my life in such a way that others would want to emulate and want to find out more about, why do you do the things that you do? Like you're asking me that question now, because I want to be a person that just touches lives. I came up with the term living trophy because it really means and speaks to what I'm all about. And that is trying to positively impact as many lives as I possibly can through this game of basketball, and in the process creating living trophies. And when you pour into people and you touch their lives and you hear their dreams, and then you can help them get there, it just brings you a great deal of satisfaction. And that's what it brought to me. And why I'm doing the living trophies master Zoom classes and sharing my knowledge is, one, I'm secure in who I am as a person, and whose I am, and that's God's, a child of God. And then secondly, I wanted to always leave wherever I was better than I found it. And that came from my parents, and it came from my grandmother. My grandmother and my mom were domestics. They worked in people's homes, and they worked in hotels. And one thing that they've always taught me was you leave a place better than you found it, and the importance of giving back in community service. I try to live my life by the Bible passage, to whom much is given, much is expected, Luke 12:48. And that's how I centered my programs. Every basketball program that I've been the head coach of or the leader of, I have had at its core principle that Bible passage, to whom much is given, much is expected. And it's almost like the handshake deal that we have with God, because God blesses us with so much. And part of that is the responsibility we have back to him to share with other people and be good stewards of what we have, of the blessing that he's given us. So, Justin, that's what I try to do, man. I just try to be a humble servant of God, and using the talents that he's given me to try to, influence or impact as many people as I possibly can and create living trophies. And then when we create those living trophies, we eventually win trophies that you put in a trophy case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that, I mean, that hearing you say that is just, it's so warmly received. It touches me because, that's the same, that's kind of the same mentality that I have in the things that I do. And I've had, several people ask me, well, why do you do the interviews, and why do you do a lot of the things that you do? And what do you, the common question, the question I get all the time, what are you looking to get out of it? Right.
Yes.
And I sit back and I laugh, and I think that, a lot of times because there are so many people that are inherently, about self, that, we see people do something positive or something good, and we're like, okay, they want something, right? That's just the way that, human nature has.
Human nature is.
But I tell people, one of my best friends in the business, Coach Anthony Solomon.
Great guy. Love Slow.
We talk probably, 2-3 times a week. And he knows, I've hammered the point home. Like, I never want a college job. That's not what I want. That's not what I'm aiming to do. I'm doing what I believe God's called me to do. And, I feel like as I watched those guys of the past, as I watched, we talked about that Mount Rushmore, I think about what would have happened if there would have been people like myself, people like yourself, people like, some of the others that are out here doing positive things as well, amplifying their voice, being somebody standing on, to make it, if nothing else, to make it a less lonely journey. Because, being a leader is a lonely place, and being a Black man leader is even lonelier. And sometimes you feel like, there's nobody with you. You feel like, you're carrying the burden alone. And sometimes you feel like, hey, why am I doing this, right? And especially you spoke on, as the level of income raised, right? The kind of the willingness to speak out lowered because of the fear, right? And you don't want to be the only one in the room speaking out. So if there's 4 or 5 people that are speaking out with you and having that conversation and, leading the charge along with you, okay, now, hey, the impact might be the same, right? I still might jeopardize my job because I'm speaking out, but at least I'm not alone in this. At least I don't feel as lonely. So, doing, understanding that God has blessed you with a lot, and understanding that God has given you a lot to be thankful for, and taking those blessings, and instead of, holding those blessings, saying, hey, I'm going to utilize this to help others be better. That's living the way that God intends for us to live. So it's truly a blessing hearing you say that. And, I think that a lot of times we talk about the game of basketball. And, for some it's a game. For me, I feel like it's a calling. And I feel like, if you're going to be successful in this business, it has to be because you want it, because you love it, and because, it is, something inside of you wants you to help others get better. And obviously that's something that you've done, and you have, and you've implemented through the living trophies. Talk to me a little bit about, as you navigate through, this period now, as you navigate through everything that you've gone through, what were some of the things that were important for your transition from, being at that high school level to the collegiate level? And I ask that because I get that question all the time. High school coaches that I know or I speak to, some guys that I consult for, their biggest question is, how do I make that jump? How do I make that leap? What are some things that I need to be doing in order to put myself in a position for that?
Great question. For me, I've successfully navigated my career because I've been intentional, and you and I both know that if we use the word selfish, people kind of look at us sideways because it has, in the definition, means a person who thinks of themselves. Right. But if you use the word intentional, people kind of like, look at you with big eyes and give you a kind of a pass because it doesn't sound as selfish as the word selfish. Right. But I've just been intentional with every decision that I try to make. I just try to be as intentional as I possibly can, and be as consistent as I can with who I am. And I think that's the very first and most important thing, is that we have to have a level of self-awareness. We have to understand who we are, okay, and why we do what we do, and what is our end game. And if we can do those things, and we can look inside ourselves, figuratively just turn, our face around and look inside, and then we'll find out what are our intentions, what are our negotiables, what are our non-negotiables, who do I want to work for or work with, why am I doing this? And if you can start to ask these questions, and the most important one is the end game. What is my end game? If I ask myself these questions, and I do the work of soul searching and gain an understanding of who you are as an individual, then you can start to systematically look to navigate your career. For me, I've always wanted to work with a guy that, one, could teach me even more about being a professional, and that's the most important thing. That our visions aligned with our personalities. May not be the same identical person, but our core beliefs were similar. And then also I wanted to work in a situation where I always work with someone, not working for someone. And that was important. And so when you kind of figure those type of things out, then you can start looking at, people that you want to do that with. And you start studying them, and you start understanding them, and you start connecting with them. And then you start to put yourself in a position to hopefully get a job, with them someday. I would also say, don't chase levels. Whatever level you're on, make that the big time. Make that the big time wherever you are, and be present, in the present, and then preparing for the future. But professionalism is something that is really, really, really important, because you don't want to be labeled, as the recruiter, and then you deliver a player, or you ride the coattail of a player, and then that player maybe doesn't pan out, or that player in 4 years his eligibility is up, and now you're there, and you got to continue to deliver players. And the moment that you don't deliver players, your value has just decreased.
Right.
So then you start to go for other jobs, and that person that you're trying to get a job with asks you, hey, have you ever done a scouting report? And you say no, then you limit yourself. So, don't allow yourself to be limited. Don't allow yourself to be pigeonholed. Be intentional about your personal growth. Be intentional about your professional growth. Just be intentional. And during this pandemic, the one thing that I have, really found out is that the intrinsically motivated people are going to be the most successful people.
Absolutely. I've heard people complain about the pandemic and how, it's changed things, and, oh my God, 2020 is the worst year ever. And I've heard other people that, have utilized this as times to grow and develop, to hit a whole different stride, to, just elevate themselves and their game to a whole nother level. So it's really just, I always say it's perception. Life is about perception and perspective. How you see it, how you view it is going to, change how you address it, how you attack it. Like you said, being intentional. I talk about intent all the time. And, it's something that I really got focused on, I'd say probably 2-3 years ago. Everything that I taught and everything that I coached was about being intentional, right? Okay, hey, if I tell you to do Micans and we've got 20 on each side, I'm going to explain to you the reason why we're doing that. And I want you to be intentional about what you're doing while you're doing it. Right. And a lot of people, they talk about muscle memory, and they talk about, okay, well, we just want them to get in the habit of doing this or get the feel for doing this. But then you lose that intent in your mind. You don't understand, I'm setting the screen. Why am I setting the screen? Well, I'm setting the screen because the play calls for it, or because coach told me to. I'm not setting the screen intently to make sure that my guy can come clean off of my hip to open up to get into the maybe he's trying to get to the nail hole and he's gonna drop to the dunker, or he's gonna kick, whatever the case may be. When you're intentional in that in the teaching of it, and then you're intentional in the doing of it, now the success comes. So that's, I love hearing that. I love hearing you say that. One of the things that has been a recurring theme with everybody I've talked to, we've talked about mentorship, and obviously, you're being a mentor for several people, countless people that are in your Zoom master classes, and other people that probably reach out to you and contact you and communicate with you. Talk to me a little bit about the mentors that you had as you were going through, making that transition from high school coaching to collegiate coaching.
Yeah, mentorship means a great deal, to me. And so I have been really fortunate with the mentors that I've had. George Raveling being one of them. He's a person that I can, contact at almost any given hour, and pose him a question or ask him for insight or, ask his opinion. But just not just do that, but just connect with him and just talk with him and just learn just by listening, from him. So he's one that's been really, really important as a mentor. Kevin Eastman has been another mentor for me, especially from a player development, standpoint, and then also learning how to become more rounded and holistic in my thinking, in my reading, in my growth from a personal standpoint, and how to start to prepare for, I guess, the second half of my career, in a sense. And then obviously Stu Vetter, played for him for 2 years, worked with him for 10 years, and had an unbelievable run as a player. I was part of his, when USA Today first came out as, ranking high school teams. We were one of the first high school programs, and then worked with him for 10 years. We were in the top 5 for 10 straight years. Went to Hawaii for 10 straight years. We were producing, high level players, and we had unbelievable experiences, together. And so I would say, and then John Thompson's, the indirect, direct, mentorship, the people like that. And obviously, I've been fortunate with having Tommy Amaker as my first cousin, my god brother. So looking at him and talking with him, and both of us simultaneously getting into the coaching profession, and both of us traveling on our journeys. But just we it's like iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely.
And that's why I look at mentorship. Is I say it all the time: iron sharpens iron. When we go into battle, it'll be swift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So without a doubt, you've had some strong mentors. Some of the names you mentioned, George Raveling, I literally look forward to his emails, his tweets. I've read so much about him. Tommy Amaker, Tommy's been amazing. I met him back when he was at Michigan. One of the players I was training and working with played for him, and I visited him at Harvard a couple times. I've watched him practice. Kevin Eastman, I mean, he's done a lot from a speaking and educating standpoint. So it's no surprise that all the people that you mentioned kind of have that same mentality about giving back, coaching and educating, and being there for others as you have. So as you've navigated through this process, and as you've gone from where you were at the high school level to where you're at now, talk to me about some of the things that looking back on it, you say, man, I really wish I knew that when I was first starting, as a student assistant at James Madison, or being at Old Dominion. What are some of the things that looking back you wish, hey, if I would have known this, what I know now, if I knew it then, man. Talk to me a little bit about some of those moments you have.
I honestly don't have a lot of those moments, to be truthful. I don't. My career has been one in which really every move that I made has been a logical step. And the people, like I said, I've just been really intentional. I've learned a great deal, from all of those experiences. But I don't think there's anything that really truly that I say to myself now, man, I wish I knew then what I know, now. I mean, obvious, it's a game, but it is also a business.
Right.
And so again, back to our point about evolving, I've understood that, the technology and everything that continues to evolve in our game. But there's nothing, really that I could honestly say, other than, jokingly Randolph Childress and I, we laughed because we're really close about um, going with him to Wake Forest. I could have gone with him, to Wake Forest and could have got into the collegiate game a lot sooner. And we kind of laugh about that. But that really wasn't my path, and nor was it something that either one of us needed to do. And we both followed our own paths. But no, I really don't. I'm sorry, I really don't have anything that I could say. Wish I knew now. Wish I knew then.
Right.
I
Right.
don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, that goes back to what you said about being intentional, right? And I think that, for a lot of us, I wasn't very intentional early on in my career, where now I am so much more intentional. So having that mindset of being intentional, I look back at it, and I look at the last couple of years, and I don't have any of those moments, right? Like, I think back on it, and I think just like you just said, because I've been intentional, whereas before, I wasn't as intentional. So that's a key point right there, for any coach that's watching this, or any coach that's learning from you. When you're intentional about your movements, and you follow the steps that you believe the Lord has ordered, you're going to not have many regrets. You're not going to have many situations where you wish you would have done things differently, or you wish you knew then what you know now, because you went into it for a reason and for a purpose, and you're walking away from it with, okay, I achieved this, or I evolved, or I got smarter, or I got wiser, or I learned XYZ. So that's important to hear. When you think about it, so 2 questions left for you. When you think about the future for Coach Kevin Sutton, you think about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what are some of the goals that you have for yourself for your career moving forward?
That's a great question. One in which I ask myself on a daily basis, because I'm trying to continue to grow. Would love the opportunity to be a head coach at the collegiate level. I think that I bring a great deal of value and a great deal of experience, and obviously a great deal of knowledge, and the willing heart to want to lead, not just be the head coach, but want to lead and want to impact lives. Secondly, would love an opportunity to maybe get into athletic administration, on some level. So again, being in a leadership position, where I'm impacting, and is still involved in the game of basketball, but I'm impacting lives, touching lives, and trying to, continue to grow the game, and more importantly, grow young men into men, or grow young ladies into women. So I just want to be in those type of position, and I just want to have as much of a platform as I possibly can, not to glorify or edify Kevin Sutton, but to use in such a way that I can be an inspiration, to others, and challenge others to continue to grow and continue to have an impact on, like I said, the game of basketball, but more importantly on, young men and young ladies. I mean, young women and young men.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talk about that, you talk about having an impact, and you talk about being able to be a leader to those that are navigating through the process that you once walked through, with the experience that you've had, with the level of success that you've had, the knowledge that you have. Without a doubt, I can see that for you. Talk to me a little bit about, so Living Trophies is your platform. It's your vision. It's something that you came up with because it's more important, not about what you stuff in the glass. It's about whose lives you impact, and how you create that change. When you think about your career, when you think about when it's all said and done, and you finally walk away from the game of basketball, what do you want your living trophy to look like? What do you want it to say? When people say Kevin Sutton's name, when they look at that living trophy, what impression or what legacy do you want to leave?
Well, first and foremost, I was taught a long time ago by my father, who stopped going to school in the 8th grade. But he's one of the wisest people that I know, and I call it left ear wisdom. And if you're ever riding with your father, and or anybody like that, you're kind of looking out the window and they're talking into your left ear. And at a young age, I didn't really know the things that he was talking about, so I would always ask my mom for an interpretation. But she was smart enough to force me to go back and talk to him. And that's a long-winded answer to say this. Legacy is not what you leave for people, it's what you leave in people. And he taught me that. And he said, when you leave a place better than you found it, then people are going to remember you. And you want to be remembered for doing things, and leaving things in people, not what you leave for them, but what you leave in them. So I hope that my legacy will be one in which a person that people say he poured into me, he cared about me, and he wanted what was best for me. It was me who he cared about. So like I said, legacy is not what you leave for people, it's what you leave in people. So I want them all, the people that I come in contact with, I want them to be empowered. I want them to be encouraged. I want them to be invigorated. I want them to pursue their dreams. I want them to keep striving. I want them to keep serving. I want them to keep sharing. And I want them to keep soaring.
Awesome. That's a phenomenal answer. And I'll tell you, I'm blessed to have this conversation. I feel like I've learned quite a bit. And I know that anybody watching, anybody that takes the moment to watch this and learn from you, they're going to learn a lot. So I can only imagine, what, your players are learning on a daily basis, what those around you in the coaching side are learning, the people in your Zoom master classes, what they're learning from you. So without a doubt, I'll say that when I think about that last generation of coaches, and we talk about that Mount Rushmore, and we talk about the power that they held, we talk about the wisdom that they imparted, the knowledge that they shared. I'm excited for this next generation of men like yourself that have an understanding of the history, have an understanding of what it's like and what it means to be a figure like that. So they have an understanding of the history. They have a knowledge of what they've acquired over the years, what they've learned, whether it be from others, whether it be through practical application of just learning the business, and then they couple that with the intention to want to share and want to leave this not only leave places better than they were when they got there, but leave the culture, leave the game, leave the world a better place than it was when they found it. So having people like yourself with that mentality, that mindset, the knowledge and the wisdom, and the willingness to share and the willingness to give that to others and to the next generation, I truly believe that when we look at that Mount Rushmore of coaches, it's going to grow. It's going to grow over this next generation where, 20 years from now and 30 years from now, our children, our grandchildren will look up and say, hey, there's a whole lot of amazing Black coaches. And I don't have to just impact the game, with my ball handling ability or my shooting ability. You talked about, one day being an administrator, right? And I think Martin Jarman that was at Boston College and now he's at UCLA, or, Carla at UVA. I mean, when we're able to look at the Mount Rushmore of coaches and right next to it, there's a Mount Rushmore of Black administrators. Yeah. And we're able to look up and say, okay, hey, you know what? I can be whatever it is that I want to be, and I can accomplish whatever it is I set my mind to. Our young men and our young women can look up and say that, they can have a career in this business and in this game, and it's not solely tied to their ability to make a jump shot. And I think that that's, those are the things that when I listen to you speak, and when I look at your career, and I say all the time, sometimes the only Bible a person will ever read is our lives and the way that we walk, the way that we live. And it's one thing to preach a sermon, it's one thing to give a sermon, it's another thing to live a sermon, right?
Absolutely.
And you talked about, to whom much is given, much is required, right? And we hear that a lot. And we hear a lot of Bible verses a lot, right? And a lot of times it's just that. It's just a verse. The person, their audio's not matching their visual, right? They're giving us the Bible verse, but they're not walking or living that verse. So to see you, a person that much has been given to, to see, you taking the knowledge that you've learned and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to throw it out there. It's on YouTube. I'm going to, educate and, talk to, whoever is willing to learn. For you to say, hey, Justin, for sure, let's do it. that's living that. That's not just talking it, it's living that. And I think that, those are the things. Those are the things. We don't need an organization of Black coaches. And I think that there are some organizations that are strong and they're doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
But an organization comes and goes. Like you talked about the organizations of the past that, they were powerful, they were moving, and then they cease to exist, right? The vision and the mission can't die with an organization. It's about much more than that. It's about the people that are living that message and are walking and talking every day with the intention of leaving the game and leaving the culture for other young Black coaches a better place than it was when they found it. So I'm excited to see you continue to grow. I'm excited for the future for you. I'm blessed to have this. Like I said, I mean, every time I do one of these interviews, I walk away from it. I've learned something. And I go into it saying, hey, I'm doing this interview for others. This is for other people to watch and learn. And I walk away every day. I'm learning from it. And I'm learning, more about myself. I'm learning more about the business. I'm learning more about, just how to be a better version of myself. So without a doubt, I'll say that, you have inspired me to think about some things a little differently. You've inspired me to continue to be intentional, to be fine with being intentional.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I absolutely enjoyed this, and I'll tell you, don't be surprised, when you look up and you're getting texts or phone calls from me just for advice or for, just to chat, because I think that I look at the value, and a lot of people say, hey, your network determines your net worth. And I never really bought into that, for the simple fact that, to me, that's looking at it from a one-dimensional, one-sided avenue, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I look at it from, if my point of view is, if I'm the smartest person in the room, then I need to find a new room.
It's a small room.
I'm in trouble. It's a real small room. So
yeah,
I want to surround myself with men like yourself, like Coach Solomon, like Coach
Mm-hmm.
Grant, like Coach Martin at Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
where when I have that conversation, like you said, that left ear wisdom, where I can feel like, okay, hey, I know that, number one, I'm going to get the truth.
Yeah. No. Which is the most important thing.
Yeah,
But it's the most important thing that you could ever ask for is someone to give you the truth. And,
absolutely.
And you have to receive it in the manner in which it's given.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you've
Absolutely.
done, all that you continue to do. I appreciate you taking the time to connect with me. Time's the most valuable asset any of us have.
Yes.
So for you to say, hey, okay, let's make it work, that means a lot to me. Like I said, I'm a historian. I'm a basketball historian. So when I took the job at Spire, I came in and I said, okay, what do I want to build this to be? I was very intentional about that. And I looked at, and a lot of people look at the Montverde of now, and that's the benchmark. That's and for me, it was no. Like I'm looking at, what you did at Montrose. I'm looking at, the Montverde from 04 to 11 and the run that you guys had there.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. That means a great deal that you took the time to look back there, because like you said, people see what it is, but they have no idea what it was.
Well, you can't get to what it is if you don't know what the journey looked like, right? And we can try and, I think that's the problem that we have within this industry, within this business, is we try and replicate the success, but we don't try and replicate the journey. We don't try and replicate the actions that it took to get there. You can't just jump to the results. You can't walk in and say, hey, I want to win a national championship. Okay, well, are you willing to put the 10, 15 years of groundwork and foundational work that it takes to build a program? You may have the talent on the floor that can compete for a national championship.
Yes.
There's a difference between a national championship team and a national championship program.
Okay. Coach Vedder used to say that all the time. He said there's a huge difference between the two.
Yep.
And we always want to be a program because that's good year in and year out. A team is good for that particular year.
Absolutely.
You know, but he used to say that all of the time. And the other thing that people don't realize is that the hardest thing about success is maintaining it.
Yep.
That's the hardest part.
Because now you got the target on your back.
Target on your back, on the front, where you know what I'm saying. You're not surprising anybody. You are the benchmark, like you said. So the hardest part about success is is maintaining that success, and the maintaining of that success starts with the leader.
Yep.
If their ego gets sideways and start thinking that they're this great coach or this great person, and it's all because of them. That's the beginning of the downfall of man. Is our ego, because what do we know? He shall be humbled, and he who humbles himself shall be exalted. So yeah, that you have a great sense of awareness, which is going to continue to serve you extremely well. Once you can do that work and look inside yourself and see what you like and see what you don't like and become self-aware, and then what happens next? We become self-actualized.
Absolutely.
So and then we're on our path. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Coach.
Absolutely.
I've had an amazing conversation. It's been a great time. I know this is going to help some people.